In this episode, you'll see echinoderms shooting at their enemies with their organs, a sly jellyfish with illumination, fish that can become several times bigger, creatures living where the pressure is the same as 1,500 elephants standing on a man, and many other sea creatures with rare and fantastic features. Each animal protects itself from danger in its own way. Some disguise or shoot enemies with some liquid, others run away, and still others grow in size. Those are puffers. Their inflating feature can be quite called a rare one. After all, there's hardly anybody doing the same thing as them. There are many videos with this process. A quite ordinary fish turns into a ball. Interestingly, if some puffers just look funny after that, then there are also those rather menacing creatures, especially if they're equipped with sharp pricks. The fish inflates in case of danger while sucking in the seawater. Out of the water, they can use the air that they'll fill their pouch-like growths with. They'll go from their stomachs. In any case, the fish grows bigger and it becomes more difficult for the predator to swallow it. If it does so, the creature will be likely to get stuck in its throat, and the predator will die. Even if it manages to devour the fish, the enemy also risks dying. After all, the puffers are poisonous. They contain tetrodotoxin, which has a destructive influence on the enemy. Predators also have their tricks and features. For example, deep-sea anglerfish use a luminous fishing rod hanging on their head. In pitch darkness, victims swim towards its light, and they fall into a trap. But this trick is rather widespread. As for Prince Axel's wonderfish, it has a special one. It's also a deep-sea fish that hunts and lures victims in the same way, except that the axlefish has its rod right in the maw, not on the head. The trap is set right behind its powerful teeth. If the deep-sea anglerfish can still fail while hunting and miss their prey that feels the catch at the 11th hour, then our Axel is an almost excellent hunter. It doesn't even have to do anything. The victim swims to the light and ends up right in the predator's maw, not in front of it, as in the case with the anglerfish. Truth be told, there is a disadvantage in this advanced device. If ordinary anglerfish can still manage to attentively look at the victim and decide if it's worth eating or not, the Prince Axel's wonderfish catches everything that falls into its maw, and due to its peculiar jaws, the creature cannot spit it out. So if it devours too big prey for itself, the wonderfish will choke and die. Speaking of big prey, while the majority of predators in the animal world hunt someone comfortable, the one you can swallow and chew, some prefer hardcore and devour the prey as big as themselves. Look at how this happens. They put brethren of the gulper catfish of the same size to the aquarium, and the fish devoured it simply in a flash. The former didn't even choke. This golden fish also got it as well as the others who fell into the aquarium to this glutton. The ability to swallow prey as big as yourself is one of the rarest peculiarities among all the animals on the planet. It's more typical of water inhabitants than land creatures. The gulper catfish is not the only one of its kind. There's also the black swallower, for example. It's a deep water creature that will challenge any glutton. This monster of the depth is capable of devouring prey 10 times as heavy and twice as long as itself. It's achieved due to its surprisingly elastic stomach that can be considerably stretched after a meal to such an extent that the swallower is exposed to a noticeable modification. Who do you imagine when you hear the word jellyfish? Personally, I associate it with small pink jellyfish from SpongeBob, or those jellyfish from Finding Nemo that Marlin and Dory were jumping on. However, jellyfish can be different. There are also such ones, for example. This is the Atolla, a very bright creature with rather thick tentacles. It reminds me of a night lamp. This is what its peculiarity consists in. Not in the similarity to a night lamp, but in the fact that it also emits light due to bioluminescence, but not to orient in the dark ocean. When the Atolla feels danger, it launches luminous blood-red impulses to the fullest, and it starts to shine brightly. This seems to be a silly thing. After all, the jellyfish will be easier to find in the darkness. This is not for nothing. The jellyfish shines to attract the attention of larger predators. They come towards the light, and they show interest to the predator that planned to attack it initially, not the jellyfish. The aggressor instantly forgets about the jellyfish. It gets into trouble itself. Well, the fish sorts things out. The jellyfish fades down and swims away. So this creature understood the proverb 100%. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Harlequin. This is what not only a character from an Italian comedy, but also an interesting sea creature with a very rare and surprising peculiarity is called. Its full name is the Harlequin ghost pipefish. When you look at it, it's difficult to understand what it is. Either a coral that got separated from the reef or a separate and independent fish species. It's also called a ghost fish due to its incredible disguise. The harlequin imitates Signathus, and it frequently lives in the vicinity of seaweeds, sea lilies, and corals in the tropical waters. Outgrowths with bright pink patterns on the body excellently imitate corals and the Signathus. Predators cannot even think that they can really see fish in front of them. On top of that, the harlequins can change color, not worse than chameleons and octopuses. Due to this, they can easily adapt to any environment. This peculiarity helps them not to care about safety. The harlequin itself is grateful for small favors. The most important thing for it is to be disturbed. Other than that, it freely hunts small crustaceans, and it spends almost all of its time without motion. Now take a look at this fish. It seems to be unusual at first glance. It has a transparent head that allows us to consider what its skull consists of. You can see eyes and the mouth of the fish on its head. It seems to be like this, but in fact, I was mistaken. The fish has its eyes inside the head, not on it. These green things are placed inside the transparent skull. These are the eyes, not the brain or anything else. We can see the Pacific barrel eye fish, aka Macropinna. When scientists discovered it for the first time, they didn't find any catch. It's just several years ago when they managed to study such an original fish and understand all its tricks. The barrel eye fish has tubular eyes. Nature cared for the fish so that it would not injure them. That's why it packed them inside the head of the animal and made it transparent. The eyes themselves are located in the head cell of the fish, filled with transparent liquid. In turn, the cell is covered with a dense, but at the same time elastic, transparent film that fastens to the scales on the body of the Pacific barrel eye fish. From the outside, it may seem that the fish always looks up. That's why it can see prey over itself. As a whole, that's the case when the fish hangs in the water horizontally. At the same time, it can turn vertically with its mouth to the prey to catch it. And then its eyes will move forward with the prey within the field of view. In this case, the Macropinna will see the prey not over but in front of itself. As soon as the prey is at the level of its mouth, the snout will quickly grab it. The latter are represented by zooplankton and small crustaceans. Though our next sea inhabitant looks rather strange, it doesn't stand out for something special, but despite this, it has a particular feature. It's not only rare but also a record-breaking one. This fish was discovered and described less than 10 years ago, and that's because it dwells at a record depth. The Pseudoleperis swiri lives at a depth of 5 miles underwater. However, scientists found this fish even deeper. It's considered to be the lowest limit inhabited by fish. Yes, you can find other creatures even deeper. Some of them live in the Mariana Trench. However, these are only primitive and invertebrate animals that are found there. The Pseudoleperis swiri is a sea slug, and in its ecological niche, it's a real predator. This is where it hunts shrimp and other arthropods. Interestingly, the creature has imposing dimensions for such a depth. It's up to 12 inches long, and it weighs about 7 ounces. By the way, other extreme inhabitants of the depth argues with it for the title of the most deep-sea fish. It's the Absarbrotula. This fish was discovered at a depth of almost 5.2 miles. Truth be told, it's unclear if it lives there on a permanent basis or if it was carried there by accident. You come up with the question, how do these fish exist? At a depth of 5 miles, the pressure is simply monstrous. In a simple language, it's equal to the weight of 1,600 elephants. This will instantaneously make atoms of anybody tear apart and even burst, but not those of deep-sea creatures like the Pseudoleperis swiri. The secret consists in their air bladder. As they submerge, they run out of gas. Due to this, the pressure occurs in the bladder that opposes the outer one. It turns out that deep-sea fish neutralize the outer pressure by their inner one. At the same time, at a small pressure, these fish feel much worse. It happens quite often that when surfacing, they're modified and inflated. They don't manage to compensate for the pressure or are just created for the normal pressure. That's why they die quickly. The fish drop that became a meme is the most vivid example of it. Shooting. Yes, sea creatures are capable of such things. For example, the pistol shrimp creates such a powerful snap with its claw that it produces an air blast and a loud sound as if it were a real weapon. You may have already heard about that. What you're more likely not to have seen is the shooting of a sea cucumber. Make no mistake, these are not vegetables growing on the sea floor, but echinoderms, the relatives of sea urchins. They're also called holothurians. On the whole, this creature is not especially distinctive, but it has an original and rare ability. When you learn about it, you'll look at it differently. When a predator attacks, the holothurian shoots at it. It shoots with its entrails right from the back hole. Sounds utterly insane, but this is a fact, and it's another proof that the fantasy of nature is unlimited. The sea cucumber shoots with fibers. In some cases, they just frighten the fish and it swims away from this crazy creature. In other cases, the entrails can fly out together with a toxin that strikes the predator. There are several scenarios how things develop. In the first one, the predator either retreats or it's defeated. In a second one, it can distract its attention to the entrails and eat them while the holothurian isn't going away to the safe place where it can quickly recover its organs. And a third one, if the shooting didn't help, the predator can tear the sea cucumber apart, or it can behave like a kamikaze and explode. In this case, it doesn't die, but the predator does. The sea cucumber, namely what's left of it, will creep away and regenerate its body. What of that? Don't these creatures seem so unremarkable to you anymore? Speaking of regeneration, it's worth telling you about planarians. These are flatworms that do not stand out for their sizes. They're hermaphrodites and they feed on invertebrates. In general, there's nothing special if it weren't for one but. Planarians have an impeccable ability to regenerate. Even sea cucumbers will be envious of them. It's not just about wound healing. If you divide a planarian in two pieces, it won't die. Each half will turn into a whole worm over time. What's more, this functions even in case of multiple divisions. In other words, if you cut a planarian into 3 to 4 parts, there will be 4 worms soon. Scientists consider that planarians can regenerate even after losing 95% of their body. In addition, each fragment will grow not only tissues but also its own brain that will be identical to the initial one. In other words, these worms copy their memory. Because of this insane peculiarity, planarians are called immortal under the blade of a knife. Let's come back to the seafloor. Apart from sea cucumbers with their exotic shooting, lyre sponges dwell there. Look at it. The similarity to the musical instrument is surprising, right? Truth be told, the shape of their body can resemble a candelabra for candles. But that's not the thing. Lyre sponges, as well as other sea sponges, are animals, not plants or something unknown. What's more, this is a predatory sponge. It's very treacherous. Small animals are carried away by the current, and they're brought to the sponge. They get stuck between these outgrowth strings that are covered with small, sharp needles and pricks. After the prey is caught, the sponge englobes it with a special membrane where the victim is digested. This is how this happens from the outside. It's just a beautiful and fragile creature, but in fact, it's a relentless, predatory sadist. Nature can surprise us. It surprises us with creatures that do not live in water, but at the same time, we can call it their element. They're capable of conquering it and literally walk along it. Yes, such things really happen. Get acquainted. This is the common basilisk. It's a lizard from Central and South America. It's also called Jesus Christ lizard. It walks along the water as Jesus did in the Bible. This reptile also steps on water. In other words, it runs. It can move on the water surface up to 1,300 to 1,600 feet at a speed of 7.5 miles per hour. In fact, the common basilisk does not go or run on water, but quickly and actively paddles with the help of its hind legs and huge claws. This is what scientists registered after capturing the lizard in slow motion. According to them, due to the rapidness and strength the lizard moves its legs with, it holds on the water surface. Anyway, it's impressive. The dwarf gecko is no less impressive. If the basilisk exactly runs on water, then this lizard is capable of sitting on it as well as moving on it, like a water strider. This rare peculiarity looks very tough. By the way, it's presented to the gecko not for nothing. It inhabits the rainforests of Amazonia with long torrential rains. Inundations of a different scale are not rare. If the gecko didn't get on well with water, it'd drown. With its modest dimensions, it would be a matter of time. As it is, nature protected it from this, and it endowed the creature with such an original super ability. Be ready! Next dreadful stories about animals wait you that keep all the villages and even islands and whole countries in awe. Mutant gorilla. Do you think a gorilla can grow up to 13 feet tall and scare the whole village? No? Well, the people of Africa have a different opinion on the matter. According to their legend, which is passed down for generations, at the end of the 19th century, a huge gorilla settled in one of the villages. Not only big, but also an incredibly aggressive one. People were afraid to go outside because they risked becoming victims of its merciless attacks. The situation was resolved only after a week, when reinforcements arrived in the village in the form of the military. They managed to catch the aggressive animal and subdue it, taking it under their sensitive control. Do you think this story could be real, or is it too frightening to be? Write in the comments. There were and are other creatures in Africa that kept everyone in fear. For example, the huge crocodile Gustave. It's about 23 to 26 feet long and weighs about a ton. This bulletproof devil lives in the Republic of Burundi in East Africa. The giant Nile crocodile scares all the locals so much that it's been recast as a local idol and mythical character. In terms of its popularity and the number of legends associated with it, the animal can compete even with the world-famous Loch Ness Monster. The only thing that distinguishes these monsters is that the existence of Gustave is documented. The most famous cannibal crocodile lives in the shallow waters near the local lake. If you believe the stories, it eats everything that its brethren do, but sometimes can also taste human meat. Gustave especially liked it when an armed expedition was sent to him. According to former participants of military operations, no bullets killed this monster. No one has yet understood what exactly it was due to. There is talk of a strange mutation that made his skin extremely strong from the moment of birth. Apparently, Gustave realized this too and stopped being afraid of anyone. He can safely go on land and head towards the village in search of fresh meat. Fortunately for the people of Burundi, this monster has not been seen for a long time. They say it died of old age, as the first references to Gustave were as early as the middle of the 20th century. Nevertheless, many locals still look around before leaving home. While a giant crocodile keeps a whole country in Africa in awe, one small but daring animal scares the entire kingdom of Africa. Of course, I'm talking about the honey badger. This animal was entered into the Book of Records as the most fearless mammal on our planet. Our daredevil reaches about 30 inches in length without taking into account the tail and weighs up to 28 pounds. It doesn't need much more than that. It's quite enough to get where you need to go and taste delicious honey. This animal is named like this for a reason. No matter how big and angry the bee family is, they can't do anything about being robbed right in front of their eyes. The honey badger's skin is too tough and thick. According to hunters, even a bullet doesn't always take it. And if you don't use your first chance to win, then the honey badger doesn't give it any further. The animal does not only bite the victim with its powerful jaws, but also strikes directly on their eyes. After such a crazy attack, it's difficult to survive. So the honey badger, in fact, has no enemies. Everyone shuns this psycho, even venomous creatures. Mambas, vipers, scorpions, no one frightens him. The honey eater has an excellent immunity to their toxins. Even if the dose is concentrated enough, he'll simply fall into a coma for a while without unclenching his jaw. And when the animal comes to its senses, it calmly completes what it started and finishes off the resisting creeper. Its soft body is like a delicate dessert for it. This mad creature is said to split even turtle shells and large bones with its jaws. I think you've already realized who animals are afraid of in the modern world, but how were things in the past? past. Who was the main threat of those times? Was it a megalodon or a titanoboa? You'd be surprised, but it was neither the first nor the second monster. According to scientists, in ancient times, the whole of America was kept in awe by a large and predatory bird, the titanus. The feathered was flightless, but it clearly didn't make it weaker. Its height reached 100 inches and weighed about 44 pounds. This monster existed about 5 million years ago, so you can sleep easily. Nowadays, we're unlikely to see it. With such immodest dimensions, Titanus could accelerate up to 40 miles per hour. The bird needed this speed not to escape from predators, but to catch up with them. As soon as the Titanus caught up with the enemy, it crashed into the latter with its sharp beak, which occupied almost half the entire head and deprived the one of the abilities to move. Bison, deer, wild horses, even underwater creatures were all helpless before this bird. And according to some theories, at the ends of the wings, Titanus had sharp claws that could easily strip the skin of animals. The powerful claws on its feet were almost certainly powerful. His pumped-up limbs made him not only a high-speed runner but also a skilled assassin. However, Mother Nature did not take into account one thing. Since the beak, and as a consequence the head, were the main tools, the bird became more and more stupid with each blow. It was literally beating its brains out. In the end, all these birds were capable of guarding their territory, mating, and monotonous hunting, caught and finished. It's said that's why Titanus became extinct over time. There were individuals who learned to conduct more cunning hunting, and with them, this feathered monster could no longer fight. Hateg Basin Wing. Yeah, you'd break your tongue just saying those ancient animal names. As you've already realized, I want to tell you about another monster of the past, which alone kept the whole island in awe. At the time of its existence, namely 70 to 66 million years ago, this giant pterosaur was the top of the food chain and the storm of the dinosaurs. Our hero lived on the territory of modern Romania on Hateg Island. Its area counted for about 30 square miles. Life was in full swing there. It was the Hateg Basin Wing, or Hatzegopteryx thembema, who ruled this way. By the way, do you know how the prefix thembema translates? It means monster. There's a reason why this flyer was called that. It's because of its incredible size. It didn't have a lot of bones, but paleontologists were still able to reconstruct the parameters of the animal, at least approximately. Outwardly, it didn't look much different from other pterosaurs, but its size was titanic, 13 to 16 feet. That's the height of a modern giraffe. And the webbed wingspan of the pterosaur was as much as 36 feet, like half an airplane. Thembema was a very successful flyer, although it hunted almost always on land. It had everything it needed to dominate: a sharp beak, thick neck, and a strong skull. One, or at most two blows were enough to take down any creature. However, what we talked about earlier is all about brute force, purely based on size. In today's world, it doesn't always win. One precise blow, preferably a poisonous one that can inject the victim's body with enough toxin and kill thousands of such creatures, is a much more effective weapon. That's what the inland taipan is capable of, a snake that always keeps all the inhabitants of central Australia, and especially those of the western part of the state of Queensland, in awe. And the paradox lies in the fact that the taipan itself is a passive and calm creature that doesn't want to harm anyone, especially people. However, this doesn't appease the locals or tourists by any means. Everyone still shivers and cannot restrain emotions at the sight of this creeper in real life. And you know, however strange it may sound, I understand them. Just imagine in front of you is a 6.5-foot long snake with camouflage coloring that makes it hardly noticeable. You know it's venomous, and you're even more aware of how venomous it is. One dose of the taipan's poison is enough to kill 250,000 mice, or about 100 healthy adult males. The heart of its victims stop in as little as half an hour. Despite this, as I said, the inland taipan himself wishes no harm to anyone. It lives by the principle, a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush, and hunts small creatures like mice, marmosets, and various reptiles. The snake settles far away from people and roads, and hides almost all its time under rocks or among cracks. But one who is not used to hiding and restraining its potential, settling for less, is the leopard of Rudraprayag, a male leopard with at least 125 ruined human lives on his conscience. No one knows when he was born or exactly how old he is. It's only known that as an adult, this leopard chose a path of cannibalism. He settled in the territory of the modern Indian state of Uttarakhand and began to annoy people. This misfortune lasted for 8 years. For the first time, the predator announced itself in 1918. No one could feel safe even observing all precautions. When darkness fell, people were afraid of leaving their home, but the leopard didn't need this. He easily penetrated human houses. In those days, they didn't have proper protection. The predator was known not only for his strange love for humans, but also for his considerable power and cunning. It's said that he could lure people to him with false sounds, or on the contrary, scare them and feed on their fear for a long time. The duration of this leopard's interference into human lives speaks for itself. For 8 years, no one could catch him. The cat was always one step ahead, as if it had known the future and skillfully used it. It was a proud hunter, Jim Corbett, who put an end to local suffering in 1926. Jim used live bait in the form of a goat to catch the leopard. As soon as the predator bit the bait, everything was solved in one precise shot. If only it were always possible to solve problems as quickly in one short action, the residents of Pennsylvania think. The fact is that in their home state, an unusual cat named Jordan appeared. He neither kills nor attacks anyone, but nevertheless keeps everyone in awe, fear for the safety of their belongings. This kitty is a real shoe thief who has stolen so many articles of clothing that he could open his own store. And judging by his appearance, he doesn't regret it a bit, which cannot be said about the poor owner. Imagine yourself in her place. You come to a new place, settle in, and want to establish contact with the neighbors. And your cat not only prevents this, but also steals all their things and causes a lot of negative emotions. According to the owner, her pet goes hunting at night and comes home with the prey in his teeth. No matter how hard she tried to lock him up at home, all attempts were in vain. The woman finally decided to put a tracker on her pet to monitor his nighttime walks. This way she knows where and from whom the cat stole another pair of shoes and can return them safely. In history, there are also larger cases with not just one particular animal, but a whole group of them raising the devil. You'll learn about it further. And the first such case is the rat island. These creatures are unpleasant by themselves. Now imagine that there are not just a few, but a gigantic number of them. In the waters of the Bering Sea, there's an island called Rat Island, and it got its name for a reason. A long time ago, this place was completely inhabited by rats. Their hordes practically drove out all other animals and birds. No one knows how this happened, but they noticed the phenomenon in 1827. Against this backdrop, a theory was put forward. They say that such a horror is the fault of a shipwreck of the Japanese ship that happened in 1700 near the island. Most likely the bilge rats could have escaped, swum to the land, and bred subsequently. Since the middle of the last century, people have always been trying to restore justice and return native lands to the endemics of these islands. Anyway, it turns out to be difficult. The rats still find ways to escape and restore the population. In 2008, scientists even tried to spray a rodent control pesticide over the island. It's dangerous only for rats. Other animals don't suffer from it. It's not fully known how exactly this experiment ended. However, they say that the number of rats has become noticeably less, and a couple more of such runs will forever restore justice. The next animal cataclysm occurred in Sardinia, an island in the Mediterranean Sea. There, in 2022, there was a strong locust plague in the last 30 years. To say that it frightened the locals is to say nothing. There was just a cloud of insects, the total weight of which was estimated to be tens of thousands of tons. They sowed death and hunger, and no one could resist them. I'm sure many of you had no idea that a simple locust could be so dangerous. After all, when it's alone, it's not scary at all. But if suddenly there's a whole swarm of them, then it's a disaster. Just think for a second. In Sardinia, there was a cloud of billions of insects, and each one of them needs something to eat. In a day, such a swarm got over up to 80 miles and swept everything edible that only met on its way. According to experts, there may be several reasons for such a large-scale cataclysm in Sardinia. One of them is associated with an increase in the area of abandoned agricultural land and a decline in the population of the region. The second factor was drought and rising temperatures, as dry and dense soil makes it easier for insects to lay eggs. By the way, did you know that locusts are not always so angry and aggressive? Scientists distinguish two phases in its life: solitary and gregarious. In the first phase, the locust has a green color. Here, it's calm and doesn't want to harm anyone at all. And in the second, brown phase, it will always support its brethren and will be ready to unite to eat all the fruits on its way. Outwardly nice animals you want to stroke and hug tight can be deadly dangerous for a man. Later on, I'll show you the most dangerous small animals in the world. First, let's take a look at this image, in which the tiny animal fits literally on a person's finger. Nature knows how to deceive because sometimes small and cute animals like this can be very dangerous. The first animal in the episode demonstrates this very vividly. I'm talking about the slow loris. Look at this miracle. This is a very cute animal, large and touching eyes of which immediately attract attention. The animal itself is small, only 8 inches long, and it weighs about 2.2 pounds. Because of all this, even an adult slow loris seems to be a revived plush toy. But don't fall for it. Despite its small size and cute appearance, the slow loris is dangerous. It can even kill a human. That's because the animal is venomous, and its venom is unusual. It's secreted by glands on the front limbs of the animal. When the slow loris feels danger, it can lift its limbs and smear the venom on its head, so it protects itself from predators. But sometimes it can attack itself. The slow loris takes the venom into its mouth and bites the offender painfully. Its toxin causes suffocation, which can lead to death. This can happen even to an adult. However, many people are not frightened by this and keep slow lorises as pets. Lenomia. I realize that not many people would touch some caterpillar in the woods somewhere, but just in case, this South American caterpillar should not be touched by anyone at all. Yes, it looks very exotic and unusual, and yes, it's beautiful, but all the danger lies behind this beauty. The outgrowths that the Lenomia caterpillar is covered with contain venom, and they themselves are sharp. When they come into contact with the skin, they pierce the skin, and the potent venom enters the body. Although Lenomia is small, its venom is incredibly powerful. It causes serious poisoning. It can manifest itself in different ways. Some people get burns and huge hematomas, some people may have kidney problems, and some can start internal bleeding, which is often fatal. What's especially scary because of the peculiarities of appearance is it's not so easy to see these caterpillars in the jungle and forests of South America. Sometimes they can sit on a tree and a person won't notice them anyway. To check if there are these caterpillars on your tree, you can make noise next to the tree. These caterpillars have an interesting feature. They rise and move synchronously, reacting to loud sounds. That's about it. Write in the comments whose feature struck you most of all. Our other videos will also be useful to you.